August 28th edition of PFT PM. Now that we're in season mode, sort of, going to try to do this once per week. Maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. Depends upon a lot of factors. News flow, and frankly, on Tuesdays, I feel like I've had my ass kicked multiple times. I'm tired. And I've always been that way. It's not just because I'm getting a little older. I've been doing this 15 years. Typically, Tuesday after traveling Saturday, 18-hour day Sunday, which I love, but it's still an 18-hour day. Monday, do the show, travel home, Monday Night Football, right back at it. Power rankings usually in the can before I go to bed. By the time Tuesday at noon rolls around, I need to take a nap. So it's going to be Wednesday more often than not. But again, the news will dictate which day of the week we do it. The goal will be once per week and only once per week because we have PFT Live 5 hours a day, 2 hours each day. That's 10 hours there. One more hour for PFT PM, or up to an hour is all I can really muster. And it's probably all you can take of me. So we're even. Here's something that was becoming widely expected and is now official. Mike Tomlin, Steelers coach, has announced that Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback. It felt like it was moving that way. And from Saturday's preseason finale in Detroit, 3rd and 11, crowd as loud as I've heard a preseason crowd, trying to disrupt the Steelers, trying to prevent them from converting. Russell Wilson calmly throws a pass to George Pickens for a 22-yard gain or something. Let me start that over because I don't remember that it was 22 yards. I don't want to be wrong. 3-2-1. 3-2-1. 3-2-1. Well, this one isn't really a surprise, but it is official. Mike Tomlin, Steelers coach, announces that Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback. It felt like it was going that way, even though the offense feels a little more exciting with Justin Fields. Russell Wilson, a steadier hand. Russell Wilson, a guy who's taken a team to a Super Bowl twice, won a Super Bowl, and played in a formula like this with a great defense, with a good running game, and you just supplement with a throw here or a throw there. And for me, the moment that Wilson won the job was in the opening drive in Detroit, 3rd and 11, Lions fans as loud as I've ever heard a preseason crowd. Wilson able to deliver the ball to George Pickens for a first down very calmly, very casually. The drive capped him the touchdown, and then he was out of the game. And then something Sims pointed out, George Pickens was out of the game too when Justin Fields came in. Wilson was the guy then. Supposedly they were going to practice this week, Steelers versus Steelers. It's Wednesday. They still got more practice time. I don't know their full schedule, but it seems a little premature. But once you know, you know. And I think we knew. Why delay the inevitable? You start getting ready for week one. Everybody knows it's going to be Russell Wilson when the Steelers go to Atlanta. Arthur Smith, new offensive coordinator, gets a chance to get back at the team that fired him right out of the gate. So it'll be Russell Wilson versus Kirk Cousins to start the season, assuming Cousins starts for the Falcons. Who the hell knows what the Falcons are going to do? But we do know what the Steelers are going to do. And when you look at the schedule, here's another reason why it makes sense. 3 of the first 6 games are against teams Wilson knows well. The Broncos, which he knows very well, week 2, back to Denver. Think about that. 2 years ago, his first game as a Bronco, week 1, back to Seattle. This time, in his stint with the Steelers, second game, back to Denver. Then they have the Chargers week 3 and the Raiders week 6. He knows those defenses from facing them twice per year. Unless when he was benched, he missed one of them late in the year. I don't have that schedule memorized. I do know this, though. Wilson gives them higher floor than Justin Fields. Maybe a lower ceiling. It's just hard to tell. With Fields, it was a little too erratic. Exciting when he runs the ball. And he's as good and effective as of a running quarterback as anyone in the league. But the passing is still kind of all over the place. One throw is really accurate, and then, that throw when he misses the guy who's wide open in the end zone, it looks like he jumped off a trampoline, or trampoline, as Homer Simpson would say, and can't even get a finger on it. It's so far overthrown. That felt like a disqualifying moment. You got to cash in. Because if you can't make that big throw in a spot where you're trying to win the job, how are you going to make that big throw when you're trying to win a game? Similar stakes, arguably bigger stakes when you're trying to win the job. And you miss that throw, not good. So I think the Steelers will be better than people realize. They have 8 games until their bye. 3 of the last 4 pre-bye are standalone primetime games. At home against the Cowboys week 5, at home against the Jets week 7, at the Giants week 8, and then they go into a break. Maybe if they're 3-5 or 2-6 at that point, you flip from Russell Wilson to Justin Fields. But if you're 4-4 or better, ride it out, because we know the Steelers get better as the season unfolds. Mike Tomlin coaches them into the best possible version of that collective 33-member team can be. And we'll see if Russell Wilson can turn the clock back to what he was before 2 misadventures with 2 different head coaches in Denver. Russell Wilson, QB1 for now and maybe for the entire season in Pittsburgh. All right, let's get right to it. I had been providing almost daily updates or mini reviews of Ian O'Connor's biography of Aaron Rodgers, Out of the Darkness, The Mystery of Aaron Rodgers. I've been mentioning it on PFT Live to the point where Sims asked whether I was getting a cut. I'm not, but I just thought it was interesting. Now, it's gotten to a point where lately it's back to the stuff we kind of already knew after he comes on and plays, wins the Super Bowl in his 3rd year as a starter, and then it falls off and they struggle to get back to the Super Bowl and yada, yada. We know most of that stuff. There wasn't any great revelation there. But then there's a chapter called The Island, which is the reference to the place that Aaron Rodgers figuratively exiles anyone in his inner circle who crosses him in any way that he deems to be unforgivable. They're cut out. And I understand that these relationships are far more complicated than any of us can ever comprehend, and you have to live it to truly get it. It's just sad to see families broken by stubbornness, by the inability to forgive and forget, by a lack of what unconditional love truly is. I don't get all sappy here, but unconditional love means without condition, without limitation. No matter what the person you love says or does to you or about you, you find a way to forgive that. You find a way to heal that relationship, and you don't insist on keeping score. You don't shut someone out because you heard from a friend of a friend that they said something about you that you don't like. And I don't know whose fault it is. Rodgers' position is these are deeper issues that have been around forever, and I'll defer to the book for the full story. It's just sad. You know, as somebody whose mother died when I was 30, my dad died when I was 32, that was a long time ago, and there was a lot of years that I would have liked to have had them around to share with them the things going on in my life, to ask them their advice, to just see what experiences they might have had that could help me. And really, you know, as you get older and you start thinking about ancestry and stories about grandparents and great-grandparents and other family members, and when you're young and you're involved in getting your life started, you really don't have time to think about it. At least that was the case for me. Yeah, I'd love to be able to sit down with my dad, talk about the stuff that he experienced growing up, the family members he knew, and whose parent this person was, and track it all back to the old country and beyond, if that was the case. And it's just sad. And Aaron Rodgers can do whatever the hell he wants to do. This isn't a message to him. I just think the broader issue is, for all of us, family's all we got. I mean, we're born alone, we die alone, but all we got is family. And when you have your parents still alive, when you have maternal grandmother still alive, whose heart seems to be broken that the grandson that called her every Sunday morning before a game has shut her out too. Brothers, you know, I don't have any brothers. I'd love to have one brother I could talk to. He's got 2 that he doesn't talk to. It's just sad. And it would be nice. And there's that minor reconciliation that happened with his dad in 2023. It would just be nice if they could find a way to put all of this behind them. Maybe folks need to go to therapy. Maybe that will help people learn how to build bridges, mend fences, forgive and forget. and realize the fact that your family is all you got. Your family is everything. And it's just sad. That's the only word I can think of, because it is sad to see parents who long to have their son around, brothers who want to have a relationship with their son. And I assume at some level Aaron Rodgers feels all twisted up about it. He just doesn't know how to go about doing it because pride gets in the way. And that's really what it comes down to. Yeah, he's really smart. Yeah, he's an incredibly gifted athlete, but there's a lot of pride and there's a lot of ego caught up in him. And it helps to set that bag down. You let go of the pride and maybe you reconnect with the people who are most important to you. That's the end of my sermon for today on family relationships. But I think most of you feel the way I do about this, that it really is important that you have good bonds with your family. And unconditional love does mean forgiving, forgetting, and finding a way to stay aligned with the people who are the most important to you in this life. Okay, back to football, mainly football. Dalvin Cook, it initially was reported as a visit. It's so funny to see how agents manipulate the flow of information and how the information robots are so willing to take whatever the agents tell them and disseminate it, even if it's not entirely accurate. The initial report, Dalvin Cook visiting the Cowboys. Oh, the truth is it was a tryout. See, tryout looks worse than a visit. Visit is like I'm above trying out. They don't need to see what I can do. They know what I can do. They don't need to see me go out and run around and prove I'm in shape. They know I'm in shape. They know that I'm legitimate. They know that I'm coveted. Yeah, he had to try out. Now, he did well enough to get their attention for the practice squad. There was another initial report today that overplayed the hand, didn't point out practice squad, just signing with the Cowboys. Well, active roster versus practice squad. Practice squad's a different deal. Oh, but he could be called up by week one. Look, that's all agents spin. And I know it's just agents doing what they're supposed to do. But those of us in the media don't have to just spew that to our audiences and give them the platform to engage in predictable agent bullshit, because that's what it is. And how many times do you see that with this gratuitous comment that's added to the sentence after the news? And, just tweet the news. We don't need to have that worthless second sentence that tries to characterize it in a certain way. We don't need that. Don't editorialize information robots. Just tell us the stuff they're going to announce in 5 minutes anyway. But they feel compelled to editorialize because they suck up to the person who is giving them that information so they can win the thumb race to Twitter and beat this one and this one and this one. I was first on that. It's a weird, I wanted to drop an F-bomb there, but it's a messed up scoreboard that these folks use to apply a quantitative value to what they bring to the table. Folks, you ain't bringing that much to the table. Oh, you're just jealous. No, I'm realistic, and I've been there, and I've done that. It's a stupid waste of time to try to box everyone out to get information that is going to be announced in 5 minutes anyway. And you don't sell your soul in one big bulk package. You shave it off one piece at a time, and that's what these folks do. They compromise their integrity one little piece at a time so they can be first with the dumbest news that nobody cares about. Hey, I was first to report that some guy that's probably going to be out of the league in 4 weeks anyway signed a deal with a practice squad. Big friggin' deal. I really just want to let the F-bombs fly today. I'm inspired by Jerry Jones in the interview that he did with Clarence E. Hill Jr. of alldallas.com. A lot of F-bombs from Jerry. It's weird. 35 years, I don't remember many F-bombs. I remember glory hole, which he uttered in 2012, not realizing what the word actually means, but I don't remember a lot of profanity. Jerry went off. So anyway, I feel like going off today, but that's all I have to say about that. Dalvin Cook, hey, look, let's be fair. Let's be objective. 2 years ago with the Vikings, he was great. He had a key play in like 5 or 6 of their wins, either turning a game around or putting a game out of reach. And he was available all through the 2023 offseason, signed with the Jets. Well, he wasn't available all throughout. The Vikings cut him because they weren't going to pay him $10 million, which I think was his salary for 2023. But once they cut him, then he was available. Remember, he was signed during Hard Knocks by the Jets. They didn't use him very much in the regular season. At the end of the regular season, near the end, they released him. He signed with the Ravens, played in one playoff game, didn't play in the AFC Championship, didn't really have a lot of film and a lot of statistics last year. So there's trepidation. But he's only 29, and I know that that's old for running backs because of the wear and tear, but he probably still has a little gas in the tank. And it's weird how teams sour so quickly on running backs. And the problem is this. It's very basic. It's very simple. If you're not going to occupy one of the top 2 spots on the depth chart, then you're in a spot that requires you to play special teams. Older running backs typically don't want to and aren't expected to play special teams. So if you're RB3, somebody else has to handle the special teams reps that otherwise would be covered by that third running back on the depth chart. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Because I think Dalvin Cook can still perform if he's given a fair shot to do so. And the Cowboys have Ezekiel Elliott. Tony Pollard's gone. We'll see what happens with Dalvin Cook. But, part of the puffery that's out there is, he could be called up for week 1. We'll see if he's called up for week 1. Because the reality is, by the time week 1 rolls around, we're not going to be sitting there with our little scorecard making sure Dalvin Cook was called up for week 1. What's said is said, and everybody moves on to the next thing. All right, I'm going to move on to the next thing here. Next topic. Kickoff rule. Owners got together in Minnesota yesterday. The current kickoff formation, the dynamic kickoff formation, was on the agenda for discussion and update, and that's all that happened. I think there was a consideration that there might be some minor tweaks that happened yesterday. There was nothing. It was a presentation about what happened, injuries down, returns up, yada, 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 done. That's it. So what that means is we go into the regular season with the touchback points still the 30. And I think plenty of teams are going to choose to kick off out of the end zone and concede the 30. You remove the risk of a long return. You don't have to waste time practicing kickoff coverage, bang it out of the end zone, and give them the 30. 41% of the returns in the preseason went beyond the 30. All the more reason, just give the 30. The average starting field position is like the 28.3. Just give the 30 and avoid that kick return that can end up turning a victory into a defeat. And I guarantee you, when we get into crunch time of games, 1-score games, and it's time to kick off, out of the end zone. Take the 30, not the 50. That would definitely encourage kickoffs. Take the 30. So what the owners could have done yesterday is move to the 35. And it'll be interesting to see if we get through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season and no one or less than half of the teams are putting the ball in play. Will they change the rule during the season? I hope they don't, because it compromises the integrity of the season. You've got some games played under one set of rules, the rest of the games played under a different set of rules. Yes, it's just one rule change, but it's an important rule change. For 5, 6 weeks, whatever the case may be, the 30 incentivizes kicking out of the end zone. And then all of a sudden, hey, this play you haven't been practicing because you thought you could just kick it out of the end zone and give the other team the ball on the 30. You better start practicing it now, because it's going to be the 35 instead of the 30. It's just not fair if that would happen. But the league had a conference call last week, and Donna Ponte, when asked about this possibility of change during the season, she said she'll never say never, and these are things that happen at a higher pay grade. And ultimately, the owners can do whatever they want to do. They typically don't like to change rules during the season, but if the kickoff rule change doesn't change the rate of returns, they easily could do that. Now, I'll say this. The hidden victory in kicking the ball out of the end zone, the drives are still starting at the 30. So if you're starting drives 5 yards closer to field goal range or touchdown, it's got to lead to more scoring. There's not going to be less scoring if you're cutting the distance from 75 yards down to 70. So at some level, the NFL might like that, even if the end result is the same percentage of kick returns that we saw last year. Because again, it's still not the safest play. They've tried to make it safer by packing everyone together and eliminating the long run where you've got two guys who collide full speed, dip the helmet, maybe fracture a C1, C2, C3, C4 vertebrae. But if they're kicking it out of the end zone, you don't have to worry about closed space collisions, long-term collisions. You don't have to worry about any of that. The play isn't going to happen. So we'll see what happens when the season starts, and we'll see if it's enough to get the owners to do anything about it. Surely they know it's possible. Surely they knew yesterday it was possible, and there was no discussion, no push, no effort to try to change the 30 to the 35. It was originally proposed back in March as the 35. It got moved to the 30, and this hit me yesterday, or maybe the day before. Can't remember. It probably got changed from the 35 to the 30 because they wouldn't have had 24 votes to make the change if it was the 35. So there's some discussions, backroom conversations, a little arm twisting. You move it from the 35 to the 30, you get your 24 votes. So that would seem to suggest for now it's impossible to get 24 votes for the 35. Maybe it'll change if there's no kick returns. And we were sold this idea that it's this dramatic revolutionary change that really doesn't change all that much. It's going to be one of the big questions as the season approaches. It's a significant rule change, but what will it ultimately change, if anything? All right, one more topic, and then we move on to questions. This private equity rule, this is great. This is the one significant structural change the NFL has made that nobody gives a shit about. And they had the meeting on the same day the roster's cut to 53. And it's not like the fans were on the edge of their seat to see whether or not the NFL would pass the private equity rule. The fans don't care. It doesn't affect those of us who watch football. All it does is it creates an avenue for having a different type of minority owner. Right now, you've got minimum limits that the controlling owner must have. The rest of the team can be held by minority partners. And it has to be all individuals until yesterday. Now you can have these institutional funds, private equity funds that can own up to 10% of any one team, and they can own up to 10% of up to 6 teams. And it really is weird to think you can have one fund that owns 60% of collectively 6 different NFL franchises. Not 60% of one of them, but 10% of 6. You get the math. Math is hard sometimes. But at the end of the day, collectively, they hold 60% of one team, even though they can't control what any one team does. And I'm fine with it for now. I just wonder where it goes from here. Is this a slippery slope? Is this opening a door to a more dramatic change in the future, a greater percentage for private equity, allowing an institutional or corporate organization to own, majority own, controlling ownership of an NFL franchise? And would that be good or would that be bad? I don't know. It just would be very different because right now they're all mom and pop shops, except for the Green Bay Packers, who have been publicly owned for decades. They did raise money back in the 20s or they would have gone bankrupt. And then once you start selling stock, it's impossible to put all that toothpaste, gather all that toothpaste up and cram it back into the tube. So they can't do anything there. And the private equity thing doesn't matter to the Packers because it's all publicly owned. There's no way to acquire the equity that could be sold to a private equity fund. For the other 31 teams, individual ownership, and that usually means somebody gets rich enough to buy a team. That person owns it until they die. And when they die or become incapacitated, a family member takes over until it's sold. And it just keeps going. The problem is values go up. There aren't enough really rich people around who want to or can afford to buy these teams. And I think the idea with private equity, because it applies not just to buying controlling interest in a team, but also to buying a minority share. Because you still have to find a really rich person who wants to buy a minority stake of a team, knowing that they have no control, no say, no vote in the ownership or management of the team. The private equity funds might pay more. It might drive the values of the teams up. That's the thing to keep in mind. So for now, it's fine. Where it goes from here, that's what possibly is going to be interesting and eventually could spark some major changes to how teams are managed at the ownership level. But even then, how does it affect us as fans? And I would submit to you, it would be better to have a corporation owning and operating an NFL team than an individual who doesn't know what the hell he or she is doing. And it's dysfunctional. And there's no one there with any real training or experience or business savvy. And they're making one bad decision after another. And it all flows from the top down. It's better to have a corporate structure. You got a CEO, you got a board of directors, you have people who presumably have skills to know how to run a business. So some teams might become less dysfunctional if that would ever happen. Some teams, maybe the owner knows exactly what he or she is doing and they know how to make the right decision at the right time. And it would get worse if it's a more homogenized and sterilized environment. But regardless, from a fan's perspective, it doesn't change anything because there's nothing we can do as fans to change team ownership. You're stuck with ownership until they die or sell the team. And as Jed York said several years ago, you can't fire the owner. All right, let's answer some questions. John Kasich, will the 53-man roster limit increase when the NFL moves to an 18-game regular season schedule? If so, by how much? Well, I like that John Kasich accepts the reality that there will be 18 regular season games because there will be. But the reality is that, and hang on one second, I just need to do a quick text here. The reality is, wait, one more, and I'll get right back to it. When they expand to 18 regular season games, there will be more roster spots. I don't know how many. That's all a subject of negotiation between the NFL and the NFL Players Association. And the union should have a long list of things it wants right now from the NFL. And it should be ready to ask for everything. And it should be fighting 18 games. We made this point before. Lloyd Howell, the NFLPA executive director, I wanted to say Lloyd Braun, different person entirely. He needs to be putting up more of a fight. Don't say, hey, who doesn't want more football? I want more football. What you say is, no way in hell are we doing 18 games. No way, no how. No, no, no. Until it's time to say yes, and maybe you get more. If you make it more of a fight, if you make it harder for the NFL, maybe you get more. But there will be greater rosters. There'll be greater game day roster. There has to be if they go to 18 games. There has to be. And I think that's one of the easy things for the NFL Players Association to request. Anastasia 026, are Joe Shane and Brian Daboll on the hot seat this season? Is it a make or break season for them? I think they are, especially with Bill Belichick lurking and the possibility that Bill Belichick could go to the Cowboys. Bill Belichick could go to the Eagles. Well, let's get him here with the Giants, the team that he coached to 2 Super Bowl wins as defensive coordinator. Remember a few years ago when that dysfunction came to light? There was a Seth Wickersham long read, #long read at ESPN.com about Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo and Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft. And Gary Myers swooped in at some point with a report that Belichick would like to coach the Giants. That's not really a stretch. If he goes anywhere, yeah, he's got an affinity for the Giants. He's got a history there. And if the Giants are going to be looking at dealing with Belichick in the division as head coach of the Cowboys or the Eagles, why not move and get Belichick? And a lot of that depends upon what happens this year with the Giants. If they have another non-playoff season, it's entirely possible. We see it every year. 7, 8 coaches gone every single year. It's a very tough and unforgiving business. And when you've got a coach out there that other teams may be competing for, the Giants will be ready to move. And look, we know how this goes. Don't tell anybody because, it kind of violates the Rooney Rule and probably other rules. But a team that knows it's done by around Thanksgiving or so, some team out there probably going to start talking to Belichick behind the scenes. And there's a good chance everything will be in place when the season ends. And then we'll just find out when we find out. Wouldn't be the first time that happened. The most obvious time was when Mike Shanahan went to Washington. Everybody knew Daniel Snyder was going to fire Jim Zorn and hire Mike Shanahan. And they made a mockery of the Rooney Rule. They allowed the rule to be satisfied by a couple of assistants on Jim Zorn's staff being interviewed before Jim Zorn was even fired, which is just a load of crap. But the NFL doesn't want to tell the world that its teams are violating the Rooney Rule, so the NFL will bend itself in knots to say there has been no violation. So somebody will have Belichick lined up. I'm confident of it, and we'll find out when we find out. Let's find out what's next here. Dan2K0, can Mahomes be considered the greatest even if he doesn't catch Tom Brady's 7 when he retires? Yeah, I think so. Look, I mean, you're giving me an easy way to navigate this. Even if he doesn't get to 7 Super Bowl wins, well, what if he appears in 14 Super Bowls? What if he goes 6-8 in the Super Bowl? He's 3-1 currently. I mean, when you consider what Mahomes has already done, and he's just kind of into his prime, 6 years as a starter, his worst performance is losing in overtime of the AFC Championship game, something that's happened twice. He's done that twice. He's won a Super Bowl 3 times, and he's lost a Super Bowl. That is amazing. Amazing. And when you consider last year that when they got embarrassed at home by the Raiders on Christmas Day, we're starting to think, they're going to be on the outside looking in for the 7-team playoff seed. And then they found it. They found their way against the Bengals. Next thing you know, they're the 3 seed. No. Yeah, the 3 seed. They were the 3 seed because they had to go on the road to Buffalo, the 2 seed, went on the road to Baltimore, the 1 seed. See, this is why the ring got screwed up. It's hard for the brain to accept the fact that the Chiefs were lower than the 2 seed because the Dolphins got listed as the 7 seed on the ring, which means the Chiefs were the 2 seed. No, they were the 3 seed. Dolphins were the 6 seed. Chiefs still got it done. Went on the road and won in Buffalo, won in Baltimore, won the Super Bowl again. They just find a way. And I'm going to be very reluctant to bet against Patrick Mahomes in any playoff game. Maybe against the Bengals. We were talking about this on PFT Live today. Against any other team, hey, the opponent's better, but the Chiefs have Mahomes. And he finds a way to make a difference almost all the time when it's time to play in the playoffs. Here's an important question from Manuel Villa. Not football related, but I love The Office and I don't like Seinfeld. I have tried watching a couple of times. Any recommendations on episodes to get me hooked or invested? Now, those of you who watch PFT Live or PFT PM on a regular basis, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you know that my position is I don't have favorite episodes of Seinfeld. I have favorite moments, favorite scenes, favorite lines. But I think the best way to get into it, if you've never watched it, season 4 to me is the best. And I'm actually watching that now on Netflix as I work. It's on. It's just background noise. It's soothing to me. And there are some really good episodes, some really good moments. And that whole NBC storyline, I love that because I kind of used the Costanza approach with Rick Cordella when he called me in January of 2009 and wanted to explore a partnership with PFT. And I did the whole Costanza. This is the show. This is the show. And we're not bending. And I said something like, I've got to have final say over everything that goes on the website. There's no way I'm going to give that up. And if you even want to control me in any way, you're wasting your time and you're wasting my time. And I fully expected when I finished saying that, Rick would respond by telling me, well, you know, we're NBC. We can't just give final say over all this content to some guy in West Virginia we barely know. But when he said, we have no problem with that, I thought, shit, now I got to come up with another way to scare him off. So, and I did try until the servers imploded once or twice. I did try to scare him off and I did try to stay independent. And it ended up being the best professional move I ever made. And I didn't want to do it. So anyway, there's some shades of that in there that makes season 4 even better in my estimation. So Manuel Villa, check out season 4 of Seinfeld. And you have Netflix, you have access to all of them. Start with season 4. King 36, do you think a precedent Do you think setting a precedent is a factor in the Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams hold in, hold out? I get the feeling the 49ers aren't in a rush because they don't want this to occur with other players going forward. I hate this fear of setting precedents. Because if you're a good enough player, it's easy to say to somebody else that says, well, you did that with this guy. Yeah, play like him and we'll take care of you. Be a second-team all-pro receiver and then we'll take care of you. Be a future Hall of Fame left tackle, a foundational piece of our offensive line, and then we'll take care of you. I don't like these rules and these concerns and living in your fear because the bottom line is they're going to do the deal. And why drag your feet? Why have these guys not available until right before week 1? And then you hope they'll be ready to go. You hope they won't get injured. You hope that they'll be at top physical condition when you know they aren't because they haven't been around practicing and getting ready to play. And this leads to another question, and this gives me a chance to clarify one of the NFL rules. This is from We All Need DeBeefy. Okay. Is Trent Williams a candidate to receive the 5-day letter? Remember. If you never show up, the 5-day letter isn't a factor. It's why, for a player, once you show up, you're kind of screwed. Because if you leave, they can send you the 5-day letter, which says, shockingly, if you don't return in 5 days, you can be put on the reserve left squad list. And if they do that, that's the nuclear option. You're shut down for the year. You can't play for anybody. You're over if that happens. I remember a year when DeAndre Hopkins was unhappy with his contract with the Texans, and there were reports he held out, and it was like, no, he showed up, then he left, and that's technically what happened. He showed up, then he left. Well, once you show up and you leave, you have no leverage. The team has all the leverage at that point. So don't show up at all if you want to have maximum leverage. Here's another one, Ohio Fan 85. You said the NFLPA vetoed the emergency quarterback rule change. Can they veto any rule change? And to be more specific, here's what happened. When the rule change was put in place last year, allowing one player on the active 53-man roster to be designated the emergency third quarterback, that was agreed to by the NFL and the NFLPA in the form of a side letter. The union actually sent the side letter around to the agents yesterday, just kind of updating them on what was happening with this rule. There has to be an agreement with the union to deviate from the existing CBA. And that agreement was just for 1 year. So to extend it, the union has to agree. To change it, the union has to agree. The union didn't want to agree to having a member of the practice squad be elevated to be the third quarterback. And the NFL could have offered the union some concession. The NFL could have tried to talk them into it, but the NFL didn't. So the bottom line is the third quarterback rule is no different than it was last year. You have to be on the 53-man roster. So if a team doesn't have a third quarterback on the 53-man roster, you're not going to have an emergency third quarterback. And some teams, I think their attitude is, if we're ever down to our third quarterback in any given game, we're already screwed. It doesn't matter whether it's a guy handing off over and over again or a third-string quarterback going out there and trying to read a defense and throw the ball in a way that will let everyone know this is why he's a third quarterback. I still think there's value. Given all the injuries we saw at the position last year, I think there's real value in having a third quarterback because maybe you can trade him at some point before the trade deadline, the Tuesday after week 9, or maybe you will need him. And don't you feel a lot better if you've got a guy who knows your offense, who can play, and he's ready to go if QB1 and QB2 get injured? Quarterback's the most important position in football. I guarantee you, if I was running a team, and the fans of the team I would be running should be very glad I'm not. The one thing that I would do is I would insist on having 3 competent quarterbacks ready to go. And yeah, there's a drop-off between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, but there's a hell of a drop-off between 2 and receiver who played quarterback in high school coming in to finish a game. All right. Here's one more question. From Rab Buffalo. This comes from Instagram. How sore will you be after Sims lays his meat hooks on you each week? I was really, when I saw him this past weekend, I was standing up, so I was able to brace myself. So he didn't really get me that good. It's when I don't see it coming. You know, they say like if you get like hit by a car and you're standing there, if you're not braced for it, you just kind of get thrown and you're less likely to be injured. You brace for it. I don't know that that's physiologically accurate. I do know this. When I'm not ready for it and he gets me, it's a lot worse than when I at least have a chance to kind of, shrink a little bit, make it harder for those big giant ET fingers to dig into my flesh. So I just accept it's a reality of every Sunday. And that means it's football season. When I'm getting manhandled by Chris Sims, football season is here, so it's worth it. Football season really is here. We're just about, 8 days away from the regular season kickoff in Kansas City. And what a great opening weekend it is. And I'm not just saying that because 3 of the 4 primetime games are on NBC. Thursday night, Ravens-Chiefs. Friday night from Brazil on Peacock, Packers-Eagles. Sunday night, Rams-Lions. And then Monday night, it's not on NBC, but hey, we can't have all 4 of them. Jets-49ers. Great primetime slate to start the season. And I really do hope the people in Brazil appreciate what they're getting. One of the marquee games on the 2024 schedule, going to Brazil. Please, Brazilians, appreciate this, because we've been sending turds over to London for 17 years. Appreciate the fact that you're getting what could be an NFC Championship preview, and at a minimum, a game that could have serious ramifications when it's time to figure out who's home and who's not when it's time to get to the postseason. And that will be here before we know it. I was thinking about that last night. It feels like a long season, but doesn't it happen every year where it's like, hey, it's already week 6. Then, hey, it's already week 10. Oh, hell, it's week 14. Season flies by. And it makes the shitty months of the year move by faster. September and October suck. You get into November, you got Thanksgiving coming up. Then you get to December, you got Christmas. But September and over, it's just, everything starts to wither and die and gets colder and the days are shorter. And it's just a crappy month or two. Having football makes it easier. All right. Hopefully having PFT PM to listen to will make it easier for you to get through the work week. We will endeavor to do this once a week during football season. Thanks for some of your time today. We'll be back Thursday morning for an all-new edition of PFT Live. Not that we ever have reruns, not that I know of, but tomorrow's will definitely be all new with Shireen Williams and me talking about all of today's developments plus other stuff in the NFL. We'll see you then. Check us out around the clock at ProFootballTalk.com. And hopefully at some point next week, another edition of PFT PM.
Okay, you have a chance to win $1 million in the NBC sweepstakes on Yahoo Fantasy. Just download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion for additional details. What are you waiting for?
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.